Hello, good afternoon everyone for this roundtable on skills for the future. While you're getting seated, I wanted to check if you're all familiar with Wissembly, because during the session you can send me questions either through the Wissembly app, either by tweeting with the hashtag OECD Week. And if you connect to the Wissembly app, you have to choose OECD Green because we are in the green room. Okay, well, first of all, we wanted to start the session by asking you a question, by doing a poll in the audience. And the question you have to answer I think with your Wissembly devices is, do you think the skills you have today will help you to find a job 10 years from now? So you can say yes, no, unsure, and we will know what you have voted after Andreas's speech, because tonight we have the chance to have with us Andreas Schleicher, who is the Director for Education and Skill at the OECD. He is the father of PISA and also PISA on skills, and he's probably one of the OECD directors that has the strongest impact on public policies up to now. And I will, before Andreas explain us how he sees this issue of skills for the future, I will briefly introduce each member of our panel, starting from left to right. So we have tonight Peter Cadas. Peter is an entrepreneur, and he has founded a startup called Traction Tribe, which helps entrepreneurs from European countries and from Eastern Europe countries to address the American market. And he's also an investor in startups, and he's Hungarian but lives in the States. We have with us Lynn Kobayashi. Lynn comes from Japan. She has founded and chairs the International School of Asia, Karizawa Isaac, which is a very particular school. She will explain you how it works, but it's a school that is in Japan, but welcomes children from all over the world and from very different backgrounds. And this school wants to teach young people how to become a leader and how to address international issues and how to be a leader, especially for changing things. And Lynn is also a member of a roundtable set up by the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare in Japan called Workforce Beyond 2035. I also welcome Katalin Novak. Katalin is the minister in charge of family in Hungary. Katalin has studied a long time in France, so we could do the roundtable in French, but obviously it wouldn't be the right moment. But she is in charge of all these family issues, and she also has this very hard task to work on what she calls the demographic winter of Hungary, and she wants to try to fix the gap by enabling families to deal with a working environment. I'm also very happy to have tonight Her Royal Highness Princess Laurentine from Orange. Princess Laurentine has been very active in fighting against illiteracy in the Netherlands, but also in the world. She's now in charge of this for the UNESCO. She is a special envoy, and she is also very involved in the climate issue. And last, we have Bill Sprigg. Bill is the economist for AFL-CIO, the main trade union in the United States. Thank you very much. Andreas?
Thank you. If I can have my slides, please. Can I have my slides, please? Thank you very much. You may have seen this picture of The Economist a couple of years ago, suggesting that, today's technology could be wiping out half of the jobs that we know today. Whether this is true or not, it brings me right to the topic of our session. You can only expect that people accept they may lose their job if they have the confidence that they have the skills to find a new one or to create a new one. That is why skills are so central. And the dilemma for educators today is that the kind of things that are easy to teach, easy to test, are precisely the kind of things that are easy to digitize, automate, and outsource. Those are the jobs that are being disappearing now. Robots taking over whole factories, and it's no longer about automated production. You think about a driverless car driving through the dense traffic of Paris without an accident for a million miles. That is the reality today. It has a profound impact on the way we use our skills. Today, I'm just speaking of tomorrow. Augmented reality, we're able to bring the world's most advanced knowledge in real time into what we can do right now. And again, it means that the world no longer rewards us just for what we know. Google knows everything. The world rewards us for what we can do with what we know. That has become the key differentiator. And it's, again, a fundamental challenge to the way we work, the way we think. So how well are we prepared for this world, for this flat digital world? One of the things that we did at the OECD, we looked at the workforce skill in digital literacy, problem-solving skills. And you can see that's the share of people with basic skills. That's the share with more people with more advanced skills. But that's about it. You can see that Sweden and Finland and the Netherlands are much better prepared than Ireland and Poland. But we're generally talking about 1/3 of the people being reasonably prepared for the flat world in which we live today, not tomorrow, today. And when you go out of this building, you find 2 out of 3 people who are not equipped. And now you tell me why that's all to do with older people not catching up with technology and things like this. But if you look at the young population, it does look better, but not that much. Huge gaps. You can look at the country like Korea, the whole population isn't doing so well, but the young are really up front. But you look at the United States, young people moving into the labor market are not better skilled than those getting into retirement on those kinds of digital frontier skills. The huge talent gaps that we have in our populations today. And the reason why this is important is you look at the jobs with middle-level skills, and those are the ones most vulnerable. That's where we're seeing losses of employment. It's almost better to have actually very poor skills as measured. Those jobs are pretty stable. They pay you less and less, and if you have those kind of jobs without high levels of skills, but they're pretty stable. But the only area where we're seeing sort of growing numbers of jobs is at the pretty high end of the problem-solving scale as we measure it. So huge challenges for us to actually equip more people with better skills to collaborate, compete, and connect. That's what you can see on this chart. Some people have called this a race between technology and skills, Before the Industrial Revolution, neither technology nor education had much of an impact on your life. But then came the Industrial Revolution, putting technology ahead of people, and we have seen huge social pains. Today we look at the benefits of the Industrial Revolution for us, but if you lived at those times, you were one of 9 out of 10 people who had a big misery for their lives. Then we invented, public education, giving everybody the kind of tools to play in this industrial age, and that created generations of prosperities, putting people ahead of technology. But if you think carefully about it, since those times, outcomes have been pretty flat. We've done more of the same, giving more people access to the kind of education. We haven't really thought very carefully about the kind of skills that are going to make people successful. And now we see the digital revolution, and again, technology racing ahead of people, And we see the same phenomenon, a huge amount of social pain. People call it jobless growth, all of those kinds of things, but it's the same phenomenon. The world has got ahead of our human capacities. How do we revert that picture? How do we get away from, on the one hand, more and more people getting better degrees, and at the very same time, employers say they cannot find the people with the skills they need? How do we get ahead of that? Degrees and qualifications. Now, everybody sitting in this room has an advanced degree. They tell you actually a lot less about the skills than you might think. Think about people who did not get a high school degree. These are their skill levels. They're not all, stupid. Some of them are actually pretty highly skilled. Some of them are better skilled than people with a high school degree, and some are more highly skilled than people with a college degree. Formal qualifications tell us a lot less about what people know and what they can actually do. We need to get better at understanding that currency of skills. And you can do that across countries. You can put Japan on the same picture, same phenomenon. But you can also look across countries. A Japanese high school graduate comes pretty close to an American college graduate. So there's a lot that, skills tell us that we don't see from degrees and qualifications. But that is still the present. And I really want to talk about the future. The idea of the past is, you tell people in school and university what they need for life. You give them a map where to go in life. No. The future is really about, giving people a compass and the navigation skills to find their own way through an increasingly volatile, complex, ambiguous world. And that is a much harder deal. You no longer know what knowledge and skills you require, but having these kinds of capacities to sort of not only adapt, but to invent, to create the future with your skills. And I want to talk about a couple of dimensions. One has to do with knowledge. But again, in a time of Google or Weibo, wherever you have, it's no longer about disciplinary knowledge. It's a lot more about knowledge networks. And can we configure? Can we absorb new knowledge? It's about things like systems thinking. Integrating different fields of knowledge, conceptual understanding. Can I think like a scientist? Can I think like an historian? It's about, design thinking. Design is actually, some people say it's, innovation is all about creativity. Yeah, creativity is an important ingredient for innovation, but innovation is a very systematic process now. Getting people to think in terms of systems design, information literacy, navigating complex, ambiguous information. Digital literacy. I showed you the data. We're not doing well enough on this. Global literacy. In our complex world, are people capable to look at the world through different lenses, perspectives, understand that people think differently, walk differently, understanding different cultures, different ideas, different paradigms, different ways of thinking. Very important dimensions in dealing with the more complex knowledge that we have around us. Pretty far away from that. Skills. Another dimension of the future, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, social skills. All of those dimensions are becoming increasingly important. But I want to add one more dimension to this, and I know that's where things get difficult and maybe even controversial. That's about character qualities. Things like empathy, resilience, mindfulness, being aware of myself, being aware of others. Curiosity, courage, leadership, ethics. Actually, if you look at the world's most advanced schools today, the elite schools, which parents send their children, their differentiator is not about teaching you 3 points more mathematics or science or history. This is their differentiator. That's why employers want to work with those people, because those are the kind of skills that make people successful. They're hard to grasp, but increasingly important in the future, and the balance is shifting dramatically into that direction. And when you think about this compass and the navigation skills, it's pretty much about this. Can we build 21st century learning around those dimensions in the same way as we have successfully dealt with 19th century knowledge? Very hard challenge, but I really want to encourage you to look into this. Even, it gets into the question of values, all of those things, but they are really essential for success today. And those people who are successful have been very, very good at that. Just giving you a couple of examples on this. College completion in the United States. You can predict some of this with your cognitive skills. People who are better in language and math and so on, they are more likely to complete college, obviously, but actually social emotional skills, character qualities are as predictive for college completion. Or you look at, this is interesting, happiness. There's actually almost no relationship between cognitive skills that we traditionally value and happiness. You can be smart and unhappy or stupid and happy. But actually, the social and emotional skills are a very strong predictor of people's well-being. So those actually attributes do matter for important outcomes. We need to become better at developing them more systematically than just leaving it to chance. That's what we're currently doing. We're not seeing them. We don't have the eyes and ears to see those qualities, and therefore we just leave it to chance for those who are lucky enough to have it. Finally, it's about integrating the world of work and the world of learning. It's not about, vocational education in this sense, but, making sure that people learn with real people, learn from with people, learn with, when you think about social and emotional skills, you don't learn them in the classroom when you sit behind single rows. It's very, very important, and this has sort of several dimensions to this. It's about high-quality delivery. In our view at the OECD, it sounds terrible, but we think work-based learning should be mandatory. It's something, giving the place of work as much of a place in learning as the place of schooling. It's about reliable, competency-based qualifications. Again, it's easy to see what degree you have. It's so much harder to see what kind of skills you have and how well you are prepared for the future. We've got to become better at this in the future. And then finally, think more carefully about what do we need to meet the goals of our societies, not by looking backwards. Employers are not the owners of the wisdom here. Now, they're very good in telling you what they need today. They're actually not as good as you might think in telling you what will make your country more competitive tomorrow. But we need to look outwards, having the eyes and ears for how the world is changing. Very last point I want to make. Before I showed how Japan is very highly skilled and how the United States just does so, and that is actually true. That's basically coming out of every survey that we are doing. But, success has also to do how good we are in extracting value from skills. And that's the other part of the coin. When you actually look at the United States, how do people use their skills? Nobody does that better. When you look at Japan, high levels of talent in the economy, in the country, but actually people never get a chance to use it. Women, lots of groups which actually never get a chance in the Japanese economy to use their talents. This is a very important part of the equation as well. In the United States, why do people move from all over the world to work in the United States? Yes, because the country is very good in translating better skills and better jobs and better lives of people. That is the other part of the equation we shouldn't lose sight of. You can develop the skills of the future, everything. But if we are not becoming better, becoming more responsive to talent of people, giving them the chances, is not going to help us alone. Why does it all matter? Actually, money is part of the equation, and there's a very strong link between employment and skills, and earnings and skills. And what is frightening to us at the OECD, these bars are becoming longer every day. The impact that skills inequality have on the life chances of people is rising day after day. There's nothing that protects you in today our economy. If you have great skills, you never had the life chances you have today. If you have poor skills, the penalties you pay are more severe than ever. And it's not just about money. You can see the same picture with health, with volunteering, with political efficacy. And people at the high end of the skill distribution see themselves as actors in society. I can change things, I can do things. People at the low end of the skill spectrum see themselves as objects of society. Now, politicians are going to do what they want. Anyway, I have no influence on this. That is not something that has to do just with our political systems. That has to do with the way in which we empower people. And last but not least, even trust. Your trust in your neighbor, your trust in the institutions. Depends on the institutions, but to a large degree depends on the qualities of people as well. That's why we have to get that right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Do we have the results of the poll? Is there someone from Assembly? Do we have the results? No, but well. Yes, so do you think the skills you have today will help you find a job in 10 years from now? 59% of you thinks you do, which is good, which shows that you have a good level of trust. Yes, 61%, it's increasing, so I think we are in an audience with a high level of literacy, which is good today. Thank you very much. After listening to Andreas, I don't know if you're still sure of having the right skills for the future. And I wanted to ask each of our panelists if they had to choose two skills which are really important for them, which one would they stress?
This was a pretty interesting list. However, I didn't see one particular skill among the others, and this was the ability of execution. I'm an entrepreneur for more than 20 years now. I started the whole thing before my 20th birthday. Well, I was an entrepreneur. I turned to the dark side and became an investor now, for the record. But really, the ability of execution is probably one of the most important skills. This is one. The other one is the ability to adapt. This is what we learned from evolution, right? So which species won the evolution? Not the strongest, not the biggest, not the fastest, not the one who could fly the highest or dive the deepest of the ocean. The one who could adapt the most. So this is what I think another very, very important skill for those who want to continue and develop their career. Things sometimes, change. Stuff happens, and those people who can adapt to it have a much higher chance to rebuild things. This, for us entrepreneurs, this is a pretty common thing. I lost everything like 3 times, and I had to rebuild it. And I'm not scared of the situation if I lose everything one more time. I don't want it, so it's a pretty overwhelming thing to build everything from scratch, but I'm not scared at all.
Lynn Kobayashi, you've set up this international school in Japan. What would be for you the 2 or 3 main skills that young people should have now?
Sure. So I think, as we all could tell from Andrea's presentation, that the challenge that we face as educators is that we no longer know what jobs our students end up having. We have to prepare our students for jobs that do not exist today. So as Andrea's presentation pointed out, I think more and more important things are character qualities. And at our school, we believe that 3 things are important. A, an ability to embrace diversity and work in a very diverse background, and people from very diverse background. And B, an ability to ask what's the most important to ourselves and to the world, to set an agenda for yourself and to the world. And number 3, an ability to take an action in the face of discomfort, or my people hate me to say this, but an ability to take risks. And because I think for the next generation of young people, not taking a risk is going to be a risk. But it's a very, this is perhaps the most difficult part for education, for the education institutions. Especially in this day and age, a lot of schools are very easily sued for any mistakes or accidents that our students make. So you really have to, if you're a private school like ours, you really have to carefully work with people who truly believe in your mission and vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Novak. From your point of view, what are the main skills?
I will rather tell you a short story. A woman goes to a company for a job interview, and she's asked what her major skills are. And then she says, I am very flexible, I'm understanding, I'm very good at time management, I am very good at logistics, I am perseverant, I'm a hard worker, and I'm a good leader. And then the one who interviews her asked, "Oh, ma'am, what have you been doing so far?" And she says, "I'm a mother." So my point actually is that these are the skills. We are talking about all different skills today, and of course we will be talking about the role of education and public education or private education, but let's not underestimate the role of family, the role of role models, the importance of leading by example, of the social skills, for example, what our children also can learn from from us. And I say that no matter in which era, no matter in either if it is in a digital world or in another, all these skills that you learn also can you learn in your family are of utmost importance and essential. Thank you very much.
Maybe Bill Spriggs, what do you think?
Well, I think you have to look at yourself as a complement to the technology. So I think the number one skill is to be human, to be able to do those things that only humans can do. It means to have, as was indicated, empathy. It means to be able to be creative. It means to be able to question. So I think that's what would be the number one skill. We already talked about adaptability, so I won't say that one. But, you know, in the chart that we saw before, and recounting the history, the Industrial Revolution brought horrible lives to everyone because we didn't know how to convert our society to actually give people the fruits of their labor. That's what we're going through today. We're very highly productive. We do almost everything is now computerized. There are very few mechanical things left. So I think we have to also realize a skill, which is to be able to be discerning about public policy so that we know how we can fashion a society that actually benefits us as opposed to enriching someone else.
Thank you. Princess Laurentine, what would be the most important skills to have for you, according to you?
Well, of course, and Mr. Schleicher also mentioned literacy is obviously a big issue, and not many people know that in Europe, 1 in 5 Europeans have such basic literacy skills that they have a hard time doing very mundane tasks. So that is a basic skill. I have to say that I spend my days, apart from my literacy and climate work, I spend my days basically facilitating dialogue between children between the age of 9 and 12 and boards of directors of big companies. We installed kids councils in now about 60 companies. So I have to say that I come at this debate slightly differently, and I find it hard to formulate any skills. And I wonder if it helps us in our thinking to start that we always want to have a predictable world. We adults, we keep on wanting to predict the world and the future, which is unpredictable. We know all the skills because you have a wonderful list. So I think it's more on our teachers to have the ability to let go of thinking we have all the answers, to actually teach our children that they can be disruptive. And it's not so much, I think, the issue of skills, but it's the issue of skills in relation to the systems that we're building. And that's where the mismatch takes place. That we line up children to be successful, but in the world that we have, in the energy transition or the economy going from linear to circular, our whole world is in transition, and yet we're giving our children the skills to be static. And that is, I think, where the issue is. So I think, and the last point that I'd like to make is I am often frustrated by the debates about education because we talk about the what and the how, like talk about skills, but not about the why. And as long as we don't have a debate fundamentally about why are we teaching certain skills, why do we teach children to program, if we teach children and tell them this is why you need to do that, then it becomes much easier to understand why you're doing something. And I think we always skip that step, but that's just basically, I think, how adults generally skip that step and forget about why they do things.
Thank you. As a mother of a disruptive teenager, I don't see any way how in education, in schools today, we can really teach them how to be disruptive. So do you really think this is realistic to say that and to teach teachers to teach our children to be disruptive? Do you really think there is a chance to do that?
Can I say,
Yeah.
just because what I mean by being disruptive, we teach our children, and I practice this actually with children, and it's unbelievable what comes out of children. That if you tell children everything you say is right, they are by instinct and nature completely creative. We need difficult words like design thinking and creative thinking, systems thinking. That's how children naturally are. We mess them up in our linear systems and in the way that we set up our educational systems. So it's more the teacher that has to be taught to be disruptive than the child. We set systems, but if you say there are no boundaries in your thinking, that's all you need to say, and children go.
Yeah, I completely agree that the teachers reform, or teacher evaluation, teacher training is really the key. And actually, Andres and I were talking this very morning about that specific topic. And you can't educate students to become creative unless teachers are creative. You can't ask our students to be crazy and bold unless the teachers are bold and crazy. So how can we make that happen? Is a huge challenge. And because, as we all know, in Japanese education system, it has been very efficient in training and educating or nurturing our students with routine cognitive skills. But when it comes to going crazy, bold and creative, that's where our challenge lies. And I think teacher education, teacher reform, teacher evaluation really needs to happen in Japan especially.
Minister Navai, do you really think a government can enhance this?
Well, yes, I had a personal example also that there was an initiative by the UN, actually UNICEF also, the biggest classroom it was called, and it was about the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, and we had unordinary classrooms or classes for children, where, for example, I myself went there and had a lesson or a class with a group of children, and what we were about to teach them the Millennium Development Goals, or to tell them about this. And what we did was an open question. I mean, come on, children, what do you think are the most important goals for us, or what do you consider the major problems of today's world? And you know what? They actually picked all the issues what politicians have been working on for, I don't know, 3 years, I think. So we had a discussion going on for 3 years, and in a classroom, in 20 minutes, the children actually picked exactly these same issues. So if they let them think, and of course the government's role, it is very important that you let creativity to the children, and you also train the teachers to be able to teach in that form. And that means that if you train a teacher, that's not ended if she leaves, if she graduates, or if she leaves the university. Then at that moment, it's still an ongoing training, a forever ongoing training, so that she can also, or he can also adapt to these new challenges she or he would face when she is or he stands in front of a classroom.
Thank you. I was wondering, Lynn, how you reconcile the discipline that you need to learn certain classical topics like literature, mathematics, history, and this creativity and this initiative you want to give to children. How do you manage to deal with the two at the same time?
Yeah, I think traditionally we used to do that. We used to teach basic knowledge in classroom, and that was it. Increasingly, we do that outside of classroom. So we give our students the pre-reading materials. So they come having read some of the very basic knowledge that they should be equipped with, and then come to a classroom. And then the classroom is where discussion and creativity takes place. And it does create a lot of pre-assignments, pre-classroom assignments. But unless we do that, we can't, because time is limited. We can't do both, cognitive skills and basic knowledge and creative skills in the same time. So we just have to we just have to change the way we teach in classroom and before and after the classroom.
And how long do you think it will take for Japan to generalize what you've started? Because it's an experience, but it's very difficult to do it on a country scale. Do you think there is a chance that your method spread in the whole country, or will it stay limited?
Well, I think it's safe to say that we're perceived as a beacon for change in our Japanese education system. Our opening ceremony 2 years ago was attended by the Prime Minister of Education, Governor of Nagano, the prefecture, and many other prominent business leaders, and then a countless number of private and public school people would come and visit our school. And some actually even claim publicly that they want to become a next Isaac. So the movement is happening, but whether Japan is not a small country, so whether that really is scalable or not is the next question. So at the moment, I currently serve on a committee for rebuilding Japanese education system that meets in the Prime Minister's office every month to discuss educational reforms in Japan. And a big topic that we discussed last year was definitely the teacher reform that we just mentioned. So I think really that's really the key. If Japan is going to be changed, if Japan can change, that is going to be a teacher reform, I believe. And also, sorry, one more thing. University entrance exam is a huge task. I don't know if you're aware that Japanese Minister of Education has announced that we are going to completely reinvent our root memorization-based university entrance exam by 2020. Wish us luck, because as we know, I think the university entrance exam is the top of the pyramid that really motivates or defines almost what primary and secondary education teach to our students. So I think those are two big challenges that we face.
Yeah, a comment to make. When I think about formulating national policies, I am always thinking about the quote that we all know of Albert Einstein: "You cannot solve a problem with the same thinking as the one that created it." And I feel that we keep on creating, we keep on knowing the same things, and we don't fix it. Climate obviously is one issue, but educational policies as well. I really do not understand how we as adults who have an old framework of thinking, our own experiences of how we were educated, our own relationship in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills, how we are, if I can use the word, is meaning less arrogant than I mean it, but slightly arrogant, that we know as adults how to formulate those policies best without actually involving fundamentally and structurally children and young people themselves. We keep on thinking that we as adults can formulate those policies, can formulate the goals and so on, whereas we have every child can help us think that through. And children are so much better able to give us insights about what they need to be learning effectively. For them, I've had many sessions with many children saying, if a teacher doesn't look at me in the eyes in the morning but I enter the classroom, I don't learn anything all day. How simple is that? Do we teach our teachers that? No, because we talk about big things. We talk about big skills. And so I feel really strongly that now has come the time, if we really dare to be different and formulate new policies, that we fundamentally and structurally always have the proper conversations with children, not as a focus group, but really make them think it through for us. Then we can gloss it, we can package it, but we need to dare to let go that we as adults always have the answers.
Yes. Andreas, among the countries that you've studied, is there one or is there an experience or something that is ahead of the others and that could be a sort of a good practice example?
Yeah, in fact, I think what's very sort of encouraging is that there has actually been change. Japan is a country, as you rightly say, that used to be very strong on routine cognitive skills, but actually over the last 15 years is the country with the steepest rise in creative skills. You can actually change those dynamics, and we do see across countries that there is sort of a positive development. It obviously comes down to the learning process, and I think we need to get a bit away from school. School is a great place to learn, but there are a lot of other places and spaces in life where we can actually foster many of the kind of very important dimensions. But when you look in schools, you know, the part that worries me most, we once asked teachers, you know, do you feel if you are more innovative in your teaching? And this is about disruption. Disruption is, you know, enabling students to question the established wisdom of their time. 3 out of 4 teachers essentially consider their schools an innovation hostile environment, in the sense that, you know, I'm rather penalized than rewarded for being different, thinking differently. And if you want your students to be creative, imaginative, we got to change the work organization. This is not a problem of teachers. This is a problem of how we structure the learning environments. But again, you know, you go to Finland, you find an amazing kind of culture where this is happening in real schools, real classrooms. So that's the international comparisons has a lot of encouraging kind of messages there. But overall, at scale, we haven't seen the kind of change that you would have hoped we would see. No?
But I think that if we want to change, be it work environments or school learning environments generally, it's also the way that we set up our measurements and our indicators to measure success. And as long as we keep on measuring success and impact and using old-fashioned indicators, then of course the school directors will always feel that they don't have the freedom to do it differently. So it's obviously you always have another boss, and I think that is to break through that chain is probably one of our challenges that we need to do. But again, we need to dare to really think it upside down in a way.
Bill Sprague?
Well, yes, I wanted to say that, I mean, of course, the United States has gone the reverse because constantly people see the performance of Americans on these tests. But as you indicate, Americans are the most productive, the most likely to use computers. If I believe the test scores, then I would believe, well, Americans couldn't possibly be the set of workers who are most likely to use computer work, but they are. And they're quite successful at it. It would be one thing to say, oh, they use computers, but they have the lowest productivity in the world. Obviously, they didn't learn anything. They use the computer, and they are the most productive in the world. So I think that this emphasis has really chased America the other way. Most American teachers will tell you that they feel very penalized, very threatened now, because they spend most of their time teaching to a test, not teaching creative thinking, not teaching people to challenge, not teaching people how to think. And so I think we can overthink that looking at what did someone get on a math test when we don't know how it correlates to the workplace, except the OECD gives us that information. It shows us what people do in the workplace. So we see in the United States what we do in the workplace, and we're quite successful because we are using that skill. It's not that we have smarter managers. Do not think that American business leaders are smarter managers. But it means that these test scores, particularly in a nation as diverse as the United States, it means that maybe we don't know how to test a very diverse population. So that's my take on the testing part. But we should not do one more thing, which we tend to do, which is that we blame schools for economic outcomes. The number one challenge facing our kids isn't what they learn, it's the current set of economic thinking globally. We have too many economists who aren't being scientific. We are 8 years after the downturn. They still think that their models, which each year tell us we're supposed to be growing, and then each year they have to correct them and say, no, we're not growing. Okay, one time, you missed twice, 3 times. I'm sorry, but if on one of your tests you get 0 out of 8, that means you don't know what you're talking about, right? So why do we hold our kids captive? Our kids aren't getting jobs not because our schools have failed in the last 8 years. Our kids aren't getting jobs because we have bad economic policy. And too often we blame our schools for economic outcomes. And there are a large number of reasons why we don't always get the economic outcomes we would like. Women are the best educated in the United States, a lot more education attainment than men, and even score well on literacy, much lower paid. So, I mean, we can't assume that just because it's a skill that we're going to see it rewarded in the workplace. So I think we want to try and separate these out, and we want to think about what kind of society do we want, what kind of citizens do we want, and not get so hung up on whether we get the economic outcome. If you want the right economic outcome, train better economists. Hold them accountable, and get rid of the ones who keep getting it wrong.
Thank you very much. Minister Novak?
Thank you. In Hungary, there is an educational reform going on, because we haven't talked about the regional differences yet. Hungary is not a big country. It's 93,000 square kilometers. So it's not a big country, but still in Hungary, we do have regional differences a lot. And it means that the schooling was not at the same level accessible for everybody. We have also a huge Roma population. It means that 800,000, so it means that 8% of our population are Roma. And we face the challenge that children don't have the same accessibility to high standard education in all over Hungary. So there are regional differences, and it's not, Hungary is the only country where this is the case. This is general. So the government, the state took over the maintenance of schools, and there is a big discussion now going on in Hungary about that, how we can, drive this educational reform. We have now a roundtable on education involving children also, or the representatives of children, because I find this also very important, just as Royal Highness you said. And we even invited Andreas so that he would be also present and show us and teach us the outcomes of the OECD studies, and get him also involved. So, but this is in Hungary is really in the focus of the discussions now, and we see also how important it is. How hard it is to drive a real contextual and structural reform in the meantime in education. And my second and last comment would be again the role of families and the social skills we also mentioned, that no matter how high standard your education is, if the example that children experience on a daily basis in their own families is something that teaches them something completely different. For example, we had a whole generation in Hungary growing up without ever seeing their parents going to work, because there was a huge unemployment. So there were children who just actually grew up without ever having the experience of seeing their mother and father going to work in the morning, coming back in the afternoon, experiencing this. And these children are much harder and more difficult to be taught why it is, for example, important to learn all these skills and how to manage later on. Thank you.
Maybe one question about Hungary, Minister Novak. Your government is encouraging confessional schools. Why is it so? Is it related to skills that will be needed in the future?
I wouldn't say that we are encouraging confessional schools, but that is true that the role of confessional or religious schools or religious education is growing in Hungary. So that means that there are schools that are run by different churches. So these are religious schools, and they are very popular in general. The level of education is also very high in these schools. So a lot of parents are eager to choose these schools, because in Hungary there's a free choice, so they can choose to go to private school or to religious school also. What we also implemented, and it is another element that is not the structure, that's rather the content, is that we are now teaching ethics. And I consider that ethics is something also very important, which you have to teach at school, and we haven't had that before. So parents can choose either to have their children be taught ethics, or instead religious class, or so religious a lesson. So that's something, but that's ethics, so which for us was very important. It's not only those skills which we used to learn, but also this part.
And what are the main pillars of ethics for your government?
Well, these are those social skills actually which we are talking about, and there is for example also the theme which we discuss at school. This is the family life, which can of course contain many topics, and even the children can raise questions. And you have to know that in Hungary we had a 40-year-long communist regime. So, for example, when I was a child, I never experienced anybody asking me at school what my opinion was. When I had my first experience when I had my studies in France, I was at the university and I had my test, and the question was, what do you think of this and that? And I was just sitting there and saying, come on, in an exam, somebody's asking me my opinion. That was really something you could never even imagine in Hungary. So we really did have to reshape our educational system in contextual sense also, so that for the children it is also very important to be able to raise questions, to be able to discuss all the matters which they are concerned also about. So that would be the main goal, actually.
Can I pick up on an issue on that one, and also on the notion of citizenship? I think that when maybe we should have conversations in, just like you have on ethics, what are the kind of societies that we want to create? If you look at all the key challenges, be it the refugee crisis or climate change, the energy transition, radicalization, inclusion, gaps in society, it's all having to do with active citizenship. Are we making sure that children feel that they can be active citizens? And we can't teach citizenship. You have to experience citizenship, and that's often, I think, outside of the school environment, or you bring the outside world into the school environment. Cultural heritage. You look at the debates around in Europe at the moment. Do we still understand what our cultural heritage is? Maybe some lessons and some courses like history are more for your cultural heritage, and your literacy and your calculus are more about entrepreneurship. So perhaps, again, coming back to this fundamental issue of why are we teaching our children the things, or why are the children learning the things that they're learning, is, I think, the fundamental debates, and combine the discussion on education with where societies are going and what are the big challenges of our time. And we were talking about startups and startup mentality. If that's the way, one of our issues of where we see the economy going, then it's important to actually take our children along in that route, and that we shouldn't teach them in old economic models, if you wish.
Yes, I would have thought that you would have mentioned digital skills when I asked you what the major skills would be, and it didn't come up. So maybe, Peter, you can explain us why.
Yeah, before that, I just like to drop in something. I couldn't agree more with Her Royal Highness. Culture definitely affects these skills, and I'm going to tell you something. I cannot prove it, but I'm sort of back and forth between Eastern Europe and the United States all the time, and I took at least, I don't know, 60-something, maybe 70 people over there with businesses. And what I see is that they are all very surprised that here in Eastern Europe, and I'm not talking about all Europe, I know that region, but in Eastern Europe they are okay if they are doing things, versus they are surprised that in the United States they have to get things done. And this is very, very different, at least for them. So definitely cultural differences affect the quality of these skills. And if we are using these standardized tests, we are not paying attention to these small yet very, very important differences. About the digital skills, I'm actually I'm a very lucky guy because I'm working sort of the most the smartest guys around, and from where I standing, it looks like any fool can use a computer. Many actually do, but I think we are in a very special situation here. So our children, they are already digital natives. We are digital immigrants. So probably we overworry this thing a little bit. Probably they just use these tools as, as we use those tools. It's so natural for us that in the bathroom there is a faucet. Yeah, in every bathroom there is a faucet. We all know how to use it. I think this is the case with them for IT stuff.
But it's easy for us to say this because we are representing developed country. But if you are in a country where access to computing and internet is more difficult, what would you advise? Would you advise them to do a deal with Google or Facebook to enable as many people as possible to be digitalized, or would you advise them to teach different skills to their children?
Let's go in order. So, of course, if you don't have a computer or a smartphone, you cannot access any content on the internet. That's for sure. But if we observe countries like India, even the poorest people have smartphones. Even homeless people have smartphones, and this is a very interesting phenomenon. But we can say that most of the people can access the internet. If they access the internet, they access the content itself. So in theory, at least, they can learn anything. They can acquire any kind of information. I'm not saying that this is happening. I'm just saying that this certain threshold is not a problem. It's another thing what they can do through these devices. I'm pretty sure that learning how to program these devices is it's a whole different ballgame. But we see quite surprising things if we give devices to poor people. There was an experiment in India. The main part of the experiment was that the computer only knew English, and these very, very poor people, just mainly children, they didn't speak English at all. And the end result of the experiment was that a few weeks later, all the children could access the internet and use the computer because they figured out things. One figured out this, the other figured out that, and they were teaching each other. And that's very, very interesting. Without putting an education system there, they just gave them the device.
Andreas Schleicher?
Yeah, just sort of a remark on this. And digital skills have a lot less to do with technology in schools than you might think. Singapore does best on digital problem-solving skills, and they're not using a lot of computers in schools. Digital skills have a lot to do with thinking skills, thinking flexibly, being sort of solving open-ended problems. And one of the traps in which we often fall in education, that we think whenever there's a new phenomenon, we have to sort of cram it into school curricula. One day it's digital literacy, then it's environmental literacy, then it's financial literacy. And at the end of the day, we have these mile-wide, inch-deep instructional systems that have sort of crammed with the past, and there's no space for students to learn, to think. And I think that's very important to keep ourselves focused on what are the essentials, what do we want students to achieve, and then the less you can, those education systems that are most successful often teach less and students learn more.
I know we should probably start taking questions, but can I just really quickly comment on the relationship with economy and education? And while we appreciate economists taking responsibility for economic policies, if we look at if our students who go out of their schools do not perform in companies, or if they go unemployed, there is a gap, and I think the schools do recognize that there's a gap between what skills that are the skills that are needed by the employers and the skills that are keeping our students with. So I think in order to tackle that problem, I think we can do two things. I think we need to have our students to be exposed to a lot of different vocations while they're in or occupations while they're in school, because I think the occupations that they have in their minds is basically about their parents. If your parents are lawyers, a lot of children want to become lawyers. So at least in Japan. So I think if you can expose our students to a wide variety of occupations, including entrepreneurs, I think that's number one. And number two, we wish that more teachers can actually be in contact with business world. Teaching career is very inflexible, at least in Japan. Once you quit being a teacher, you can't really come back. At least in Japan. So if you can be a teacher one day and be in a company and an entrepreneur one day and then still be back as a teacher, I think that would really tremendously change the way the schools teach our students.
Yeah, I will indeed, in this Kids Council that we have in the Netherlands with these Kids Councils in these 60 companies and ministries and indeed what we see is that basically the children look at the dilemma of a company and we bring that dilemma into the classroom, and one of the biggest hurdles is indeed the attitude of the teacher because they need to actually start looking and being interested in that company as well as a role model, because the children explore the issue and do the research from their perspective. So it's not a set method. They need to explore what are the issues underlying that dilemma, which is really this experience-based pedagogy and learning. The teacher, I think that if we want to bring education and the job market, the labor market, and work closer to indeed, is for them to actually be curious and interested in that world. A lot of teachers, they never looked at websites of any companies. Children generally know more and are more interested. They're surfing the web much more into that world. So indeed, I think it sometimes are very simple solutions by bringing another world into the world of somebody else, in this case teachers, and you actually progress. And another thing that you mentioned also about this research, that children have the freedom to explore themselves, is I think indeed very important. That way they feel empowered. The key thing there is, I think, that if we want our children to think with us about our issues, not to solve them, but to help think it through, it's really important that we tell them what we're going to do with their advice. Otherwise, it's even more debilitating and thinking, well, I'm thinking, but nobody takes me seriously. But I think that way to explore and give people that freedom and children that freedom to enter into that world, that we're not living in separate worlds.
And if you look at today, young people who come out of the education system with their degree and look for a job, and they have much higher degrees than their parents used to have, and still the unemployment rate for young people is quite high, and they are very disappointed. And what can we do to bridge this gap? Do we need more specific skills? What do we need to do to bridge this gap? Bill?
Well, again, we didn't drop a stupid bomb on ourselves 8 years ago and suddenly lose knowledge. We had a massive economic failure, and since then we've had really bad economic policy. So what young people are going through today, it's not that I don't have the skills, we don't have the jobs being created that can use those skills because we don't have jobs being created. In the United States, as an example, despite the fact that we are going through the baby boom starting to retire, the backfill, the jobs that are now empty, these are jobs that are being emptied by a less educated cohort compared to our current young people, and yet this is the lowest share of young people to hold a job in United States history. We've never had people under 25 with this low share of employment. So and the ones who are finding jobs often are backfilling into not jobs which are being upskilled, but jobs which are low paying and they're overskilled. So the overskill problem is real and it's serious. But part of it is also that we haven't found a way for workers to capture the increased productivity. So in the 1990s, the United States did deep capital investment in computers. Everything in our lives has now changed. We think about just the computer, but just think about this. The car I learned to drive on was quite mechanical. It had a carburetor. The way that the pistons moved was a mechanical thing. There's no mechanical on a car now. All the cars now are controlled by computer chips. This has happened a long time ago. The chips are getting better, smarter. The cars are improving in efficiency, but it's still a chip. And those auto mechanics aren't learning totally new skills. They're just getting better at working with the chips. Refrigerators in the United States, they're all controlled by a computer chip. Washing machines, they're all controlled by computer chips. So we don't have mechanical things anymore. Even those jobs they already went. If you walked into a federal office in the United States in 1990, you would have seen roughly one support person, used to be called a secretary, for each professional. If you walk in today, there's one support person for whoever's the boss. Nobody else has one. Those jobs were long gone. So I didn't say digital because a lot of the digitization has already taken place. The same workers are working far more productively. If you're at a restaurant in the United States, long ago they switched to having immediate information on inventory. At their headquarters in Seattle, Starbucks knows when a cup of coffee is bought. They know this. This makes their model more efficient, but are the workers benefiting from a company that's more efficient? No. And McDonald's, are they benefiting? McDonald's is making billions of dollars in profit. The reason we have the fight for 15 in the United States is those workers are saying, we're a lot more productive than we used to be in 1970, when the minimum wage in current dollars would have been about $12 an hour. They're getting paid $7.25. They're taking this new lesson that I said they had to learn, which is be discerning. Be able to figure out that I'm a lot more productive, but I'm not getting paid for being a lot more productive. So we've digitized things without thinking through how does it get to benefit our lives, the lives of everyone, not just the lives of whoever came up with the inventory control program or the person who figured out Uber as a neat platform so I can misuse you because you're unemployed and you desperately need a couple of hours worth of work. How do I benefit? How do we make people benefit? And this is the lesson that we're kind of that we're kind of missing, is the transformation that we saw in the Industrial Revolution, where people increased their productivity, they didn't benefit, but then we made all sorts of rule changes. We let them organize. We let them bargain to get that share of their productivity gain. We changed and said, well, you have to have minimum wages. You can't just pay people anything. We put in place, society must benefit from this transformation. And that's what we've been missing with this digital world, is we haven't put in place, where do we benefit as a society? I'm very happy that, people become billionaires because they've been inventive. Good. Let's make some more people have more comfortable middle-class lives out of that same innovation.
Do you fear that we're training maybe too overskilled workers today?
Well, it's a general thing. Being overskilled is sometimes probably it means that not appropriately skilled for other things. Those people who are overskilled and don't find a job are, in my personal opinion, they are often victims of the whole, how to say that, the whole competition which is going on the job market. So they have to face the ugly truth that they are not winning this competition, and they develop other skills and try other fields where they can develop and they can act, more successfully. So this is a little bit, I think, a temporary thing. If someone doesn't find a job for certain period of time, then because he's overskilled, then he's probably not skilled enough at the same time.
And I think the key thing is indeed what was mentioned also about Hungary, to make sure that we don't start creating generations of disappointed young people, because they will make the future. So I think the key is to find creative and innovative solutions. We know that this is a reality, it's a harsh economic reality, to make sure that young people continue to value the importance of education, that there's not this sort of growing sentiment of what's the point of education, because we all know how important it is to learn, to develop, to explore. So we have to, I think, develop creative programs to make sure that in the time that young people come out of university or come out of their skill learning environments, that we do find places for them to continue to apply their skills and to develop. So in the Netherlands, for example, we have a program of young people getting paid a little bit, it's true, but having like an internship in order for them to continue to learn. So I think that's just a very simple example, that to make sure that we do that we focus on, we take the reality as a given, but that we focus on creative solutions and programs for that.
I would add 3+1 points from the Hungarian example. First is your question is, for example, dual education, which is also very common, and we use this also in Hungary. So in universities, that many of you know, that means that you basically have a contract between a firm or between like a company and the university student, and they make a contract. So actually this entrepreneurship or this company would finance the studies of this very youngster, and they have a contract that after graduating he or she would actually go to this company and work for the company. So that means that there is a real need from the business sector, and for that real need there is actually an answer. So that dual system is working very good, as improving in Hungary also. Another point is talent support. We have a very important talent support program in Hungary that begins at the earliest age, but that means that to draw you the structure is that you can offer 1% of your personal income tax to this purpose. So that means that with 1% of your personal income tax, you can support this national talent support program, and we have like yearly 10 million euros for this purpose. And with other talent support programs, we try to concentrate on that field where a young person, a child is talented in, so that he or she would get an extra support either in the educational system or outside, with including civic society, so NGOs also, but real talent support in this specific field, no matter if it is in sciences or STEM or in music or arts or sports, in every field. And the third point is employment policies, of course. So it is a question of employment policies, and we have active employment policy measures. Just one example is that because you have this youth guarantee program in the EU, but another one is a Hungarian example, that we give tax benefits for the employers which employ young people. So if an employer employs a young person below 25, then he would, or this company would get a tax benefit so it is beneficiary to employ young people. And to your Royal Highness's comment on culture, that would be my last comment. But I would like to tell you this Hungarian example also, that you mentioned culture, how important it is, and to react to the social or to everything what's going on in a country or in that very society. And I mentioned you how that we have a huge Roma population, and for the first time now in Hungary we implemented in the national curriculum the culture and the history of Roma. And that is very important, because you are living together with a minority, with a big minority, that we've been living together for centuries, but still we don't really know each other. or we don't really recognize each other. And that's not only important for the non-Roma children, so that they would learn about the rich culture and rich history of their Roma mates, but it's also very important for the self-esteem of the Roma children, so that they themselves should now, it's an obligation that they should experience how rich their culture, how rich their history in Hungary is. So I find this a very important point. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, as we have on the panel 2 countries who have a very different policy in terms of migration. United States, who has benefited a lot from migration in the two part of the skill spectrum. You have attracted many really high-skilled students and also low-skilled workers, which have really filled the gaps at the both ends. And in Hungary, it's a completely different policy, where you seem to be really afraid of migration and wanted to keep the country quite closed. So can you, each of us, explain how you view this issue of migration and skills?
Well, I think one thing, and I was very appreciative of the comment about Hungary now being inclusive in its education. This is very important. The United States has an advantage in that we use as a national narrative a language of inclusiveness. Doesn't always work. We have one state, Texas, which, Lord help it, wants to reinvent textbooks that are quite un-American. But we have a scholarship and we have support for people who want to teach inclusiveness because it's important to citizenship. And so most Americans, I think, feel comfortable with the idea because we try to make sure that we are inclusive. It took a lot of battles because there's a huge tendency. I mean, this happened during my generation. I mean, we wrote textbooks as if America were a white-only country. Fortunately, now textbooks recognize that in 1770, 40% of the people were African. So you can't teach this as a white-only country if at your very founding, 40% of the people were African. This doesn't make sense. You can't talk about the American Revolution if you had blacks fighting for the American Revolution. You can't take them out of the history book. It's important to include them so that you get an inclusive view. Everyone was here, everyone participated, everyone made the country. And I think coming up with a positive way is important. Europe tends to ignore the role that their economies played in transforming the countries. If I were to mention English, the country England, the UK, to most Americans, what do you think they eat beyond fish and chips? They're going to start to say curry, which of course didn't come from the UK. Just as people, if you said American, you're going to say pizza, which obviously didn't come from the United States. Tacos, which didn't come from the United States. So, you know, we have to find a way in other countries to also dig deeper, look more carefully, because there are the same faults in many other countries' histories and excluding the diversity that was already there. Ask most Americans, name a famous French writer. Most Americans are going to tell you Dumas because they've seen the Three Musketeers, the Man of the Iron Mask, the Count of Monte Cristo. You know, French would not say that. They'd say Proust, they would say someone else, but they wouldn't say him, right? So, I mean, but he was of African descent. His father was Haitian. So, if you know, this kind of selective memory of not being inclusive, it's very important. And so, in a very dynamic economy, there are rooms to have people who come in with less skills because they're complementary of an investment strategy. We want people to get more skills. We want them to get higher skills. And so people coming in with less skills can be complementary of that, and bringing in people with very high skills can enrich the body of people who have very high skills. So I think it's a narrative. It's finding a positive narration so that everyone sees themselves included in the story.
Katalin?
Thank you very much for this important question, because I think it's really essential that we talk about this issue. And I think that there are two aspects which you also mentioned. One is the political approach, which Hungary represents, let's say, by which we do say that this migrational crisis is actually a crisis of today, of the whole of Europe and for the whole world, actually. And that this is a crisis that we have to face, and this is a real challenge. And we do say that the solution should come on the spot. So we have to find solution in those very countries from where these migrants are coming from. And so this is the political perspective, I would say, or this is the political approach by which we say that we make a difference between the economic migrants who seek for better life, better jobs, and for those refugees who really run for their lives. And of course, for refugees who seek asylum, we do give asylum. But for those economic migrants who are looking for a better life, maybe we Hungarians or the Hungarian economy and the Hungarian society cannot finance or cannot receive these economic migrants. For example, the reason which I mentioned to you, that we have a huge Roma population which is also not as well as integrated as it as we would like them to be. So we have an internal integrational problem also in Hungary, and we have to face that one too. But this is the political setup, and of course, education, or what children teach and experience, is that if somebody is in Hungary, or for example, if an asylum seeker seeks asylum in Hungary and is settled in Hungary, then actually he or she would get the same services, the same social benefits, and the same education as Hungarian children. In plus, we have, for example, textbooks for refugees, by which we these are extra textbooks written for them, by which we try to integrate them more and learn them, teach them the language and so on. So we have all these manners how we can integrate the asylum seekers also, but that is the problem with, I mean, that is then the challenge with those already living in Hungary. And what Mr. Spriggs just mentioned, that we are living in the heart of Europe. So of course, all these tendencies, all this richness of the difference of cultures and all the advantages of being a European Union member state, where the free movement is for us essential, for us who experience actually not being able to cross the borders because we had the walls which separated us from the western part of the world. So for us, this liberty is of utmost importance. But on the other hand, we have this given approach about the economic migrants, which we are maybe not able to accept in this huge number. Thank you.
I'd like to add to the perspective of children on refugees is very interesting. We're conducting a piece of research as we speak among children and young people in the Netherlands about how they view refugees coming into the Netherlands. And they actually view this, and not in a naive way. They completely recognize that there are issues to deal with of integrating new people in society. What really is interesting in the outcomes is that children and young people always look at it at the reciprocity. So they actually also see that it's everybody has a part to play. And they also see the enrichment from a pure development and cultural and educational perspective, that they say they're innately curious, and they see this as an enrichment, that you have people from other cultures coming into your classroom to get to know different people, that they can bring new things, food you mentioned, different ways of looking at the world. And it's generally, again, adults who are afraid to lose what we know. And that's why this notion of curiosity is, I think, so important. So I think we can learn a lot from the perspective of children, not to be afraid to bring in change and to bring in new things into our lives. And this is certainly, and this piece of research among thousands of young people in the Netherlands that we found as an impulse into the debate that perhaps we adults should let go again of our fear of change.
Thank you very much. One of you made a remark on Wissambly, which is very important. You stressed that we've been talking about the role of mothers, but the role of father and equal parenting is also very important. So I just want to stress that and correct that.
Of course, I meant that too. It could have been a father also.
One of you has stressed that we should have a better recognition of the skills learned in the non-formal sector, and I think that the panelists have been stressing that a lot, even if, as you say, we could always say more. And one important question that we haven't addressed, but which could be for another roundtable maybe next year, is how we can shift employers' view on path to employment to be more in line with those skills that you've all that you've all mentioned. Well, thank you very much. I think we don't have time for a question from the audience. Unfortunately, we've been a bit too long. Thank you very much to our panelists for your very rich experience and sharing it with us. Thank you.